Good. Okay, welcome to the Board of Selectmen's meeting of January 7th, 2019. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation,
under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay. Citizen statements and petitions. No. Correspondence to the Board and an Historic Commission. Okay, there's request from the Historical Commission regarding some action on Misco Springs building and interest in preservation of the historic nature of the wood property. Is there anyone from the Historic Commission here? No.
It's 7, I think, so I don't know if they're planning on coming.
I talked to Tom Raleigh, and he said that he would be coming.
Okay.
So, and he sent the letter.
Yeah, I mean, I see what they want, but I think we need to have them here to have that discussion, so if they show up, we'll go back to that. Is that all right, Chris?
Yep.
Interview and consider appointment of Dan Byer to the Historical Commission.
So I move to appoint Daniel Byer to the Historical Commission for a term to expire 6/30/21.
Can you turn it down? Step down a second.
Can you turn that mic down a little?
Discussion, Dan, you want to come up?
Oh, yeah.
Good, how are you? So you want to serve on another?
Yeah, I
Commission.
guess. So as part of the 350th, I think I got fairly involved in some of the historical aspects of town. And it sounds like they've got at least a couple openings that they could use a little more help
Okay.
trying to get on. I mean, there's a lot of stuff going on.
There's, how many openings do you know? It's just one, do you know?
I'm not 100% sure. There might, yeah. But I know I had discussed with them.
Those have been open for a while. Well, we know you, Dan, so, I mean, I don't
I don't know how
have...
many more questions I need to ask
Questions.
you, except to say thank you for wanting to step up on another committee.
Yeah.
You know, just, I think it's more of a time management thing at this point, but if you think you can handle it, then
That's what you want. All in favor?
I,
Great, thanks, Dan. Okay, someone we were looking for walked in. Tom, you want to come up for that letter you sent us? Sure. Okay, so first in your letter, you had mentioned that there was a interested buyer for the Misco Springs building. And I have had discussions with Kathy Schofield on that. What is it that, is being done now?
Well, we just want to, the Historic Commission just wanted to make sure before anything went forward that the soil test on the property was going to be done as was discussed when this property first, the purchase of this property was first discussed.
Mm-hmm.
Because if it somehow passed into the town's hands and suddenly we're liable for that, I think that would be something we want to make sure didn't happen.
Right. Well, at the time, Selectman Schofield was working on that. So I can check with him. Kim, have you heard anything about that at all?
No.
So I'll check with Rich and see if he heard any more on that. And the other piece of that is if there's an interested buyer, It'd be nice to have that done outside of having to involve the town. So,
Wasn't the discussion originally that the owner of the property wanted to donate it to the town to sell to someone and didn't want to sell it to someone else?
No.
yeah, I mean, ideally for us, I think we would rather, if someone's interested in buying it,
Right.
it'd be best to have the private parties do that on their own. Because once you get the town involved, we can't sell it directly to
Right, I, no,
this
I
person.
agree.
So-
I was just on the impression that that was off the table.
What was off the table? I'm a little bit confused, Tom.
Well, I was in the impression that the property itself, the idea was they were going to be giving it to the town, and we'd have to sell it. They weren't interested in selling it to someone
You want to try to
else.
clarify a little bit?
Okay.
So the property was offered to the town, and we elected to investigate it, and part of that investigation required a Phase 1 environmental study. The board asked the committee to go back and do some more due diligence, so we understood what the impact is to our community before we take on the property. That's the exercise that Selectman Schofield was working on. At no point has the board decided that we're going to accept that property as that donation. The owner, the current owner of that property is giving us that offer, but we haven't decided if we're going to take it or not. So to Selectman Schofield, Selectman Reel's point, if the board chooses not to take that property, then it would be in the best interest of the current owner and the buyer to go through that due diligence exercise.
Okay, well,
Because our opportunity was to either purchase or be gifted the building or accept, I don't know if it was $150,000 check as
Yeah,
opposed to
in lieu of.
accepting the building.
In lieu of, right.
And our thoughts were that, the historical significance of the building, we'd like to see it preserved. One of the thoughts was we'd accept it pending, some investigation and flip it like we did with the George Street house where it was preserved. But if this buyer is interested, I think we'd be open to letting that transpire privately. The problem is, I don't think we've had, there's been no communication officially
With
for
the,
us to have that discussion with the
Right.
current owner.
yeah, and I think that what you're describing is probably the best way to go about it. I just didn't know that was on the table.
Yeah. So, that's where we are right
But
now.
in all fairness to the community and the Historic Commission, I think that a further discussion with the current owner right now to see where that is, Mark will check with Rich on that. We can certainly have those conversations again and meet with the Historic Commission after that, and then make a decision on which direction the town wants to go in.
Absolutely. All right.
Okay. The second thing was the Wood property on Hartford Ave West.
On Hartford Ave West, correct. The Wood property, the abutters and the owner are interested in preserving that building and the property due to the historic significance of it. So the Historic Commission was willing to take on the responsibility of performing a new study like we did with the historic district here in the center of town and over on Millville Street, and what that process would be in time for the May town meeting.
Okay. Do you need or you need approval for that?
Yes.
I can make a motion on that if you want, Mark.
Sure.
All right, so I make a motion to allow the Historical Commission to investigate the Wood property for future discussion.
Step down second. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. And the Mendon Center Historic District Committee needs to be appointed. We've appointed most of those members. right? Okay, so we had lost one member,
Right.
so what is it,
You were at-
four,
you
is
were
it
at-
4 left?
Yeah, and I think they need 5 for a quorum.
Well, the 4 is a quorum.
The last one, I believe, was Mike Goddard, who we appointed last month.
And then Rich resigned.
Right.
So they should be able to meet. It's just, we need to
We need one more volunteer.
put either one of us on there until there's 3.
Gotcha.
So,
I'm
You
I'm
got
not
4.
volunteering myself if you're asking.
no.
Sure, Tom?
So with 4, they should, I mean, if it's a 5-member
Right.
committee, they should be able
I
to.
thought it was supposed to be 7.
Oh, is it? I thought it was 5.
I thought it was a 7, there were 7 slots.
Okay.
Well, then we need some
Should we reduce
volunteers.
it to 5? Or there may be some statutory.
Yeah, I have to talk to the other members of the commission about that.
Even if that's the case, technically they have a quorum, right? So,
Well, that's true. Even if you have 7, you still have a quorum of 4.
Yeah.
So, we'll try to fill the spots, but
anybody interested?
Dan Byer? All right, well, thank you for bringing that to our attention. And I'll check with Rich on the first issue and then look at that district commission, see if there's been any advertising for those spots and what statutory requirements are.
Yeah, especially because there's some things going on in the center of town. I think it's the utmost importance.
Sure. All righty.
Thank you for your
Okay.
time.
Thank you.
Great, thank you. Next. Interview and consider appointment of Seth Shufro to Economic Development Committee.
Hi.
Hi, how are you?
How are you?
Well. So, you want to be a non-voting member, because you don't live in town, right?
Correct. I do not live in town.
So what is your...
What is my
brought
goal?
you to that committee?
Well, I went to school for economics at Boston College, and I wanted to see if I could use my experience in the private sector to help bring some new business to Mendon, to help you guys drive some tax revenue and whatnot. So like I said, private sector perspective, what a business would want, what would make it easier for entry for somebody to come into town here. So I've been to a couple meetings. Things have been successful so far, if Tom might agree to that. And I want to see how I can help develop things further.
So, but how did you become interested in Mendon's Economic Development Committee? How did you hear, I mean, where are you from?
Originally from Natick. I grew up in Natick, and I just bought a house in Milford about a year ago. And I was looking for volunteer opportunities in town. There was nothing available, and I started looking at surrounding towns and reached out.
You have some? I mean, as a non-voting member, I'm not concerned with a whole lot. I mean, your background, you said you studied economics. You have some interest in, living around this area,
Mhm.
seeing this area's economy grow. So, I mean, your input is obviously will be valued, and
Yeah, and it's more of a consulting role, just to give some ideas to the voting members of the team, so.
I'm sitting here and I love the idea. I think it's great. I really appreciate you willing to kind of cross borders to come in and start your public service. I guess it's more of a process thing, I'm not sure if we even need to appoint the position.
yeah, that's,
I guess it's more of a process thing. I mean, if you want to come in and volunteer and, step into meetings and, be part of that and help move that committee forward, and gain some experience that way, and hopefully some of your experiences from college, you can apply some of that and the committee can learn from that. I would love it. Again, I'm not sure if it's, as a non-appointing member, I'm not sure what the value of the appointment technically is in a process standpoint, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I understand.
So,
Right, because I mean, you can attend a meeting regardless, whether you're a non-voting member or not. So really, you're saying what's the point of
An appointment.
the appointment?
yeah, of the appointment, yeah, that's, I'm just a little bit confused about that, that's all,
Yeah,
you know?
I've received an email asking to come tonight and meet with you guys, and
Yeah, yeah. Is Tom
Yeah.
not here again?
no, he's right there.
Oh, hey, Tom, I thought you might have gone downstairs again. I knew you have another meeting or something, I thought, so. Do you want to come up and talk about it? Sorry, I didn't see you sneak
Yeah,
in.
no, that's fine. Hello again.
Hi. So what was your thinking on this?
Well, I know that I had received his resume saying that he was interested in being appointed as a non-voting member. Given his experience in it, he's brought some ideas to the table, because I said, hey, come check out a few meetings. He's brought some ideas to the table. I'm very much in favor of it. The way I had received the resume, I was under the impression that he needed your approval to do so.
The town clerk said that.
Yeah.
Needs approval to attend a meeting?
Well,
To be
to be on the board as a non-voting member.
Oh, to be
Well,
on
What is the
committee.
value of that versus just coming to the meeting as a participating member?
I guess
of-
it makes it more official, I guess. Makes it more official. It adds weight to his advice. Being a member of the committee rather than just being a person that shows up to,
Okay.
you know.
Resume builder?
sure.
I mean, I guess for me, Mark,
It doesn't really make a difference to me.
it doesn't, so.
Okay.
I was more of a process question than anything, so.
Yeah. You didn't motion this, did you?
I did not. All right, so I move to appoint Seth Shufro to the Economic Development Committee as a non-voting member for a term to expire 6/30/19.
Step down a second, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Well, welcome and thank you.
Thank you guys for the appointment. Thank you.
Look forward to some good results.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Thank you. Hey, Tom, do you think you'll be, I'd be interested in a future meeting to having maybe an update on what the committee's been doing?
Absolutely. Yeah, I can get that together for you.
Great. Discuss recycling program with the Board of Health.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Gentlemen? Good evening.
Good
Good
evening.
evening.
This is our friend Steve. He's going to be talking about it,
Excellent.
the new program.
Good evening. My name's Steve Lasoskis from Waste Zero. We are a waste reduction company. We work with about 800 cities and towns across the United States, approximately 200 here in Massachusetts, to help reduce trash and increase in recycling. We had a discussion, the Board of Health had a discussion with regard to textiles recycling. Roughly 8% of the solid waste stream in Massachusetts now is recyclable, reusable textiles. So that's bedspreads, jeans, sweaters, leather items like belts and shoes. So that 8% of all tax dollars spent to dispose of solid waste are being used to pay for destruction, incineration of clothing items that could be resold or reused in our economy. So one of the programs available to help divert that material is a curbside recycling program, which is operated by Simple Recycling. And that program is pretty straightforward, like the name implies, fairly simple. And the way the program works is on regular recycling day, Simple Recycling will send a van that will come to their home. So if you're a Monday recycler, you can put your pink bag, I'll talk about that in a second, out at the curb, and the van will come, collect the material, take it away, and ensure that it's recycled. And if Monday gets bumped because it's a snow day or it's a holiday, Simple Recycling bumps Monday to Tuesday, and then Friday goes to Saturday. They follow the town's routes to the letter. The textiles recycling is done via pink bag, so Simple Recycling will send literature and 2 pink bags to every household before the program begins to let them know the program's starting and to give them something to recycle the clothes in because it has to be kept clean and dry. When people recycle, those bags are replaced. So if you recycle 1 bag, you get 1 by hand delivered to you at collection, or 2, or if you leave 3, you get 3. And those bags are secured. So they're tied to the railing of your front door, the front steps railing, slid under the doormat. They're secured to something so they don't blow away in a windy day.
I was gonna ask,
become
if
litter.
they take the bags out and then leave, or the clothing out and leave the bags,
No.
and then they're blowing around?
No, so the bags, everything is just simply picked up, and it's like trash and recycling typically is. The trash ferries come and make things disappear. This is the textiles recycling ferry comes, and your pink bag is gone, but you have new bags secured, so you don't have to hunt them around your front yard on a windy day and try to go find them.
So I got a quick question about
Yes, sir.
that. What happens to properties that their houses have very long driveways, et cetera, or it's a private way? How do you get the bags to those properties?
So the replacement bags?
Yeah,
So in that instance, it may be tied to the post for the post office box, as an example. You can't put it in the mailbox, obviously, but it could be secured to that if you can't.
just a logistics issue I was
Yes,
just thinking of.
yeah,
All
that's
right.
a good question. Thank you. So if someone loses their bags, needs more bags, cleaning out grandmom's house or granddad's house, and they need 30 bags, there's a web form they can fill out, or they can call somebody or email somebody and say, I need 30 bags, and typically that morning, the next morning, the replacement, the bags that they requested will be delivered directly to them in a similar manner. If it's a lot of bags, you may just, in that instance, just drive it to the house because you can't wrap 30 bags around somebody's mailbox. But it's a pretty straightforward process. Collection would occur, again, on the recycling route that the Board of Health has established for town service. And the material, Simple Recycling, is a recycler. They specialize in recycling this material and finding the best use for it. So they aggregate it all and then send it to their recycling facility for it to be processed and recycled.
There is no cost to the town. We actually will be getting money from them for the recycling.
Okay. I just answered one of my questions. And what's the value of that?
So as the chairman indicated, the service is free, and the town would receive $20 per ton, or a penny a pound for the material. So you're paid by pound within 15 days of the end of each month. So the material is weighed daily, rolls up into a monthly weight, which is then multiplied by a penny a pound, and a check is cut.
Okay. And when do those checks come? Is that a monthly thing? Is that an annual thing?
It's monthly within 15 days after the expiration of each month.
Okay.
The check will be received by the town.
Is this only for people who get their trash, pay their trash bills through the town, or is this every household?
Every household.
Every household.
Yep. Just like currently right now.
Just the regular recycling?
We do our recycling, whether they're on the trash program or not. Regular recycling is open to every resident as well. It's just with as well.
That's good.
It's too bad that the Economic Development Committee didn't stick around. They would have loved this.
Let's see.
What else can you tell us about the program?
It's been well received. It's been in operation in Massachusetts for about 20 months. Roughly 938,000, just over 938,000 residents are receiving the service every week now in Massachusetts.
How many?
938,000, excuse me.
Wow.
So it's been very well received thus far in Massachusetts. We opened the hub to service this part of the Commonwealth probably 6 months ago, maybe. So it's newer. It's newer here. It's a slightly more mature up on the North Shore, Essex and Middlesex, northern Middlesex counties.
Where is that hub?
The hub that services this area is in Taunton.
Are there any towns immediately around Mendon that are currently doing this?
Yeah, so Milford's been up and running for a couple of months. In those 2 months, it's been about 32,000 pounds of clothing that has been recycled in those 2 months. We're having conversations with several communities very nearby because their public process is their public process, and want to give them the ability to deliberate as publicly or as non-publicly as they choose to. We don't share the name of folks who haven't publicly made a declaration of intent or interest, but Milford has approved the contract for the service and has been operational for 2 months. Similar-sized communities, however, would include Rochester, Dayton, Tingsboro, Hamilton, and Merrimack up on the North Shore. So there are several communities of similar size and spread residentially. Ashland and Natick and Framingham are also in the service as well.
What are some of the larger challenges you've seen with this program in communities?
To be honest with you, well, I've been completely honest with you throughout. I always hate saying that, but to be frank, nobody believes it's true. So you're going to collect, this is like the 1980s for recycling all over again. You're going to collect it for free and you're going to pay me money? That doesn't happen. Well, it does happen. And Simple Recycling's Simple Recycling's preference is to sign a contract for longer than state law typically allows in Massachusetts. They'd prefer a 10-year contract, to have a 10-year agreement where they'll collect for zero and pay you for the material. This service has been around for a while. It's been growing very, very quickly. When the markets were down, it was growing quickly. When the markets are up, it continues to grow quickly. But many people say, how do the economics work out if you don't charge me for collection and you pay me? It works out because textiles are the most valuable material, fortunately, in the recycling stream, more than metal, more than any other object in the recycling stream. Now, there's relatively few of them, but that allows you to pay for the collection of the material in a way that you can't.
Textile is not the only thing that you're going to recycle.
That's correct. And household goods, thank you for that. So the program, the first people who look at the material are the thrift stores. So Savers and Goodwill and other folks. So if you look and say, oh, I could see that on a thrift store shelf, that they'll accept it in the bag. So pots and pans, one of the top 5 contaminants in the single stream recycling system, are accepted by this program. Clothing, another one of the top 5 contaminants in single stream recycling, accepted by this program. 3 of the top 5 contaminants of single stream recycling are accepted in these in the pink bags, which will hopefully help clean up single stream and maybe in the long term help reduce some of the processing costs the processors are experiencing there. But if you see it on the thrift store shelf, it's something that can go in these bags. Pots, pans, dishes, glasses, cups, tools. They advertise jewelry, never received any yet, but there's always a first time.
Just to be clear, when this is called recycling, the cans and bottles, obviously, which would be pulled out of the trash, that's still going to be picked up on a regular basis with Harvey. Right. This is a different type of recycling, so that there's no confusion when people hear recycling. They don't automatically throw all their stuff in the trash in there.
Right.
Did you say the term of the contract was 10 years?
The term of the contract in Massachusetts is 3 years because of this statutory requirement that 3 years, and then you have to go to town meeting. So in other states, it's 10. Massachusetts, everyone has signed a 3-year agreement at most.
3-year agreement. And what happens if we wanted to terminate that agreement before that 3 years is up?
There are 2 termination provisions. There's termination for cause. So if the Board of Health wished to terminate the contract for cause, it could do so, state the reason, provide, I think it's 20 days for resolution of the disagreement, and if it is not resolved, then the parties move their separate way. There's also cancellation for convenience, that you simply don't like pink bags anymore, or whatever the reason is, the board would have the right to cancel for convenience. So the contract envisions both of those. It also provides the board driver control. So if, for instance, I'm driving the van, I don't, but I'm driving the van, I got loud music or I'm smoking and there's something that says contractors of the town shall not smoke in their vehicles, you have the ability to exclude the driver who is loud music, driving too fast, smoking in their vehicle, whatever the standard that you have is, or the board has, you can enforce that. The contract provides that authorization to the board as well.
So really, if you want to get out of the contract, you just have to say you don't like the pink bags, Mark.
Chris, excuse me, just so we, this is going to be a contract between the Board of Health and the recycling.
Correct.
So it's not through,
I gotcha, I understand. I'm just being facetious. I noticed there's a note here on the FAQ. Donors do not get a tax deduction on this.
Correct.
So I think this is important that people hear that, you know, is that they won't be getting a tax deduction on this unless they choose to go back to their, to Goodwill or Salvation Army or anything like that.
Yeah, and I think that's an interesting thing to note. I think a lot of people, and we've seen this through textiles donations statewide, with the change in federal tax law, most people lost their tax deductibility of textiles anyway, unless you have a significant number of deductions and exceed that $10,000 deduction. That's a standard deduction now. So the vast majority of people are in that boat, whether you're donating to a nonprofit or using a for-profit company. The vast majority of textiles are not tax deductible anymore because of the change in federal tax law.
Okay,
Interesting.
cool.
Okay, I mean, it sounds like a valuable service to the community. I know I could benefit from it, because there's times I have a bag of clothes waiting around to be brought to Goodwill or whatever, and just don't get around to it. This would be easy to do, so.
going to make it
I'm sure
much
there's
easier.
other people that have the same situation. So this was mostly just to let us know, right? You just bring it up.
Correct,
Okay.
informational.
Excellent.
Thanks for still being creative.
When do you think it's gonna start?
Like in the March or April timeframe, assuming the board, contract negotiations and
Right.
such, but probably March, April timeframe.
Excellent.
When the time comes, we'll get some pictures of whatever they're going to be using as vans, so that the police department and everybody knows that this isn't just some criminal riding around looking to break into houses type thing, that
Right.
we are aware of what's going on, because it's a plain van, right?
It's a plain white van with the wrap on it, but
It does have your name on it.
that's correct. But it's, to your point, better safe than sorry.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So I assume the Board of Health will be sending the residents some sort of rollout plan,
Yeah.
explaining everything? Okay.
Great. All right.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Good night.
Discuss senior abatement worker program. Amy?
Sorry, I didn't have these ready to, not ready, but I didn't have them available to put them in your. Just disregard, number 5 is one that we use when somebody's applying for the program, they need to have their taxes current. That's not what I'm here to talk about, I'm here to talk about the pictures. Sorry. Okay. I wanted to bring to your attention that our program is running very well. We're into right in the middle of our fiscal year, and the Board of Selectmen or the Board of Assessors have put aside $20,000 through the overlay account for this program. We're currently at about $8,000 of pay into our senior veteran workers. So we're halfway through the year, and we're doing very well. We're being utilized by 8 departments. And I think it's a very meaningful program, and it's a very beneficial program to the town and to our departments. What I need to bring to your attention is the fact that this program was written up to pay a senior or veteran worker minimum wage for doing a particular task up to, the Board of Selectmen has increased the amount to $1,000. So this is written under Rules and Regulations number 2. Taxpayers participate in this program at a rate comparable to the Massachusetts minimum wage. I wasn't the one that created these rules. They're very similar to many towns have adopted similar rules. What happened though, minimum wage has gone up since I've been in town 11 years. Minimum wage, I think, was $8 when I first got here, went up to $9, $10. And this past year, $11. So now we're looking at $12 as of January 1st. I'm here to ask the Board of Selectmen if they want to stay with this course of action or if they want to consider something different. So,
I would like to consider something different.
okay.
I think we should look at this each fiscal year as we prepare the budget and determine the rate of pay at that time. Because now you have, midway through this fiscal year, the minimum wage is up $1. And that kind of affects the,
Sure, and I've had another year where it was $9 at the first half of the fiscal year and $10 the second half. It's accounting, it's something that we can do.
right.
It does decrease the number of hours, so now we're down to approximately, well, for this fiscal year, it's about 90 or under 90 hours per year. So
We're on our way to 15 an hour, so,
correct.
to just keep going at that rate.
But I don't know that we have a crystal ball. Do we know in July of the prior year that the minimum wage is going to be going up in January?
Going up, so it's 12 this year. Next January is 13.25, I believe. I'd have to look at it, but
Okay.
it is set for the next so many years until it gets to 15.
Okay. Where we're currently in the middle of this fiscal year, should we stay the course and stick with our, current rules and regs and then
That
look
would
at
be
it?
my opinion.
Yeah, I definitely agree. I think the challenge that we have is, is that we're talking calendar year versus fiscal year in the way that we manage our budgets. So we have to be, really, really astute to the way our budgets are being managed. So, I agree with what Selectman Schofield's saying. Selectman Schofield, I'm sorry, Mark. I'm so used to saying that to him.
Okay.
Chairman Reel is saying in respect that if whatever process we establish, it really should follow a fiscal year schedule. That's my-
Yeah, and I mean, if we look next year and we say, well, we really are staying with 11, even though, because we don't have to follow minimum wage by law for this program. We can determine that at time of when we're starting to prepare the budget, so that we make sure that if we have the ability to, I'd hate to just see these hours be decreased, so, because it's gonna happen.
Sure. And I will say right now, senior workers, they've become aware that, on the news, that minimum wage went up, and they are aware, they've signed this document, and they're expecting that, their wages will be going up too. So I need to be able to give them an answer.
Yeah. I think that net, the way that this is written, if their pay goes up, it taps out at $1,000 anyways. They just get
Correct.
there faster. So, they're actually doing, less hours.
Exactly.
Yeah, so.
Which is fine, but the point of this program is also to benefit the community.
Right.
So, there's they get a benefit for the hours they work against their taxes, and then the community gets a benefit for
That's
the
right.
hours they're working. So as they're gonna stay with their, cap of 1,000 a year, but on our end, the available hours is just gonna dwindle, so. Who, was this
This was
policy written by,
This was originally created by Jean Berthold's office, because again, the funding for this comes out of the assessor's overlay, but it was modeled on many other towns. And I've researched, when I first started administering this, I looked at the town of Lincoln, my own town of Hopkinton. The rules and regs are very similar from town to town. I think we kind of share them, but share them with one another, so. But ultimately, this was the board that decided to increase it from, I believe it was 500 at one point, to 750, to finally 2,000. Currently, we have 20 active participants. I do want to just bring notice to 2 active workers that are no longer with us, Lynn Walton and Diane Rice were both very active in this program. Lynn worked at the library for a number of years. Diane Rice had just joined us, and she was going to be a tremendous asset to this program. She's just out of the workforce, and it's nice when we get somebody in that capacity, because they're up and ready to go, helping us in our departments. And we just lost both of those women this year. Fortunately, 2 people have already come along and have completed their paperwork. Again, new retirees, which is really, it's an asset to the program. So,
Excellent.
So, and I just also want to just put in a plug that, I know that BOS and FinCom are going through the budget process. The last 2 years, we've budgeted $20,000 for this program. The last 2 years, we've utilized $15,000 each year. It's kind of uncanny. But, people, for whatever reason, sometimes they join the program and anticipating that they're going to make the full $1,000, and life happens. Either it's a medical issue, a family issue, or something. So we've, not everybody makes the $1,000, but the last 2 years we've made it up to $15,000. We do have 20 participants. I would hope, or that the BOS would budget or allow for $20,000 again this year, even though we may not utilize it all. At least it gives everybody that's in the program the opportunity to potentially make it. So, and if
Sure.
the money's not used, it just stays on, I guess, the assessor's overlay. So,
What do you think?
Again, I think that I'd be in favor of what you proposed, Mark, with keeping it on a fiscal year schedule.
Mm-hmm.
And I think talking about, what that rate is, as we're going through the budget cycle and what we think that should be, and setting that at that time.
Right.
Throughout the budget cycle is the right approach. And then at that point, I'm still happy with the $1,000 per year. I think
Right.
that was something we deliberated on a lot, and it's a good number. And, and I like the benefit to the community, so I'd like to keep it going, obviously, so.
Right. So, the question is, do we stick with 11 through the rest of this fiscal year?
I would, because, the budget's set, and we're gonna be having to, correct me if I'm wrong, Kim, we're gonna have to be shifting money around if we were to sit there and we were to do an increase. So I'd like to keep it at the 11 for this year, because that's what we established in the
Yep.
budget. And that sets precedence of what we're proposing, which is keeping it on a fiscal year.
I think that's good.
good. So then, Kim,
Yes.
I change the wording in this for you to review so that it's reflected there. So when future participants come on,
I'd like to change that.
or perhaps it should come out of your office, I don't know. I mean, originally came out of the Board of Assessors office, then it was the Board of Selectmen. It's kind of, the program's bounced around a little bit. Wherever it needs to come out of, I think the wording should change so that when future participants come in, they're not, confused as to what the
Yeah.
objective is.
Yep.
Okay.
Sounds good. All right,
Thank
thank
you
you.
very
Anything
much.
else?
Thank you.
No, just, we got a lot of programs on brain health this month, one this Thursday. We've got one at 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock. Whether you're 50 or 90, come down and you can test your brain out, see how healthy you are. And then we've got another program later in the month on the 31st. We also have a low vision program with the Commission for the Blind coming out on the 29th. So there's something for everyone in terms of your health, and have a healthy, happy new year to Board of Selectmen.
Great,
Thank
thank you. Fire Department update. Hey, Chief.
Hey, Chief.
Well, I've been here about a month, and I thought it would be good to give you a quick synopsis of my review of the fire department, kind of a state of the department, seeing as this is the month to do state of the state and state of the union.
Excellent. Maybe we should start doing that. Never mind, no.
One comment that I do want to put up front, so that if I do start to go outside my bounds, that you rein me in. I do come from a town that had the strong chief law. I know you don't. I'm just used to going forward and doing things, so if you feel I'm doing something that I really should come before you. I won't take offense, please let me know.
Just make sure you throw the gavel at him, Mark.
Yeah, I have two to use, so I can throw one and use one.
So, over the month, I've done a lot of listening and just evaluating what's going on, and really, there's two things that I think I was wrong thinking coming into the job. One, I think there's a lot more that just needs to be addressed and some modifications made from a leadership perspective. But two, I was concerned coming in how the personnel would take somebody coming in from the outside and being a new chief where they haven't had one for a long time. And I shouldn't have been concerned. I want to put up front that the personnel have been very open to the change, very accepting of me coming in, and very helpful in getting me to understand what is going on. And they know that there's changes that do need to be made. So that's a very pleasant surprise for me. What I did is I put some thoughts into blocks. They're in no particular order. I'm going to go through it at a pretty summary level. Feel free to ask questions.
Is this to point number one that you made? You made 2 points, so
Oh, no.
the first point is that a lot more needs to be addressed, and the
Yes,
second
so
point was...
a lot of these
Okay.
a lot of that first point will come out as I go through these sections.
Okay.
One, information technology, and this is, I think it's kind of indicative of the department as a whole. Almost each person has their own individual computer that they do their work on, but we don't share any files. There is no common directory, so it's very much pocketed where all this information is. So we're going to be working to implement a shared file storage that anybody can get into based on their need. On reporting on the fire incident and patient care reporting, this is one of the items that did require immediate attention. We were 9 months behind in filing our state fire reporting recap due to some reports over that time frame not having been completed. So we jumped right on that and changed some of the processes that were in place. And it's not that the guys just didn't want to do the reports. It's the processes that were there just kind of put some blocks out from them being able to effectively and efficiently do them. That delay was potentially putting at risk some of our fire education grant money, but we did get caught up in December. In addition, there were some patient care reports that had not been done up to some close to a month old. Again, procedural changes, and people not realizing the steps that they could take to help them get these reports done a little bit sooner. We cleared the way. Chief Kersey was helpful in doing that as well. So at this point, we are doing our reporting timely. On the EMS reporting, we're also working with Coastal Medical, which is our billing company. Currently, there's a pretty manual process in place for the patient care reports to get to the billing company for billing purposes. In my previous town, we had a process in place where Coastal actually went into our databases when we were complete, a report was completed and marked complete, they would just take the information out. So it was no work on our part to send them that. So I've talked with Coastal and we're going to work towards that direction. Fire inspectional services. Recently, the last week or so, I've been able to put a little bit of focus into this as well. It appears we've been doing a very good job at taking care of the paperwork part. But a couple of things have happened in the past week that just led me to realize I probably need to spend a little bit more time on there. And again, not because our inspector doesn't want to do it. I think it's just an educational thing. One, when we do inspections of businesses, there is no documentation on that. Basically, we're doing a walkthrough and making sure that everything is safe and we sign off on the card. I'm taking a form from my previous job and going to implement it here, perhaps with some modifications, so that we start creating a history of inspections in the buildings in town. And we can start a site database so that we know the history for that particular site. Another issue is some of the blasting going on in town. They were scheduled to blast today, when I found out on Friday, but it was going to be within 250 feet of Route 16, which is a mass highway. And by mass highway regulations, if you're that close to the highway, you need their approval to do it. So the staff was not aware of that. They thought it was a much shorter distance. So we'll be putting more procedures into place on the inspectional side.
So did it happen?
No, the blaster, we did speak with the blaster. Actually asked if I would waive it, and I said I don't have the authority to waive that.
Right.
And so he has put off blasting for, until he gets that approval. I talked with him today. He was up at Mass Highway, the regional office today to get that work going.
Great. Thank you.
I'm glad you said that because I have to let the staff know that whoever had the detail tomorrow, it's canceled. Policies and procedures. I mean, pretty simply said, the ones that are there are not coordinated. They're not well known by the staff, and they're outdated. Job descriptions that I could find are pretty vague, and there's really no job requirements within those descriptions as well. I've worked on a manual in my previous job that I brought over. I have forwarded that to the union just for their initial feedback, as well as the on-call person that you appointed, I think it was at our last meeting, Jason Bangma. He has experience in his career job working on policies and procedures, and he's offered to assist with this effort.
Great.
So we'll be working on that. The personal protective equipment, I was kind of surprised that there's not a whole lot of equipment in stock, especially because the department has shrunk so much over the last few years. We've had to change something that was in the culture that appeared that members have been able to keep things like their helmets when they left the department. So we're now in a position of having to buy helmets and such material for our new hires coming in. But that item was stopped at the moment that I heard it. A message did go out to everybody that town purchase equipment stays here unless otherwise authorized.
Thank you.
There was an appropriation of $25,000 last year that was used to purchase gear. Chief Harris did that while he was here on the interim basis. He was able to purchase enough for 10 people, and I believe that we haven't gotten the full invoices back on that yet, but I'm pretty sure that's fully expended. That pretty much just took care of the people that were currently here and working. To outfit the additional people that I see coming up in the next year or so, as well as there's one career position that was not outfitted because he's on long-term injury. We're probably looking at about $35,000 to properly outfit them. We are keeping the old gear, and the new people will use that gear when they're working here. The 10-year standard is an NFPA standard, which doesn't force you to stop using it, but if something happens, you're going to be kind of held to that standard. And the more serious part is the Mass Fire Academy will not allow students to come in and do any type of live fire training unless they have gear that meets the NFPA standards. So as we get everybody to that level of gear, we will keep the second sets so that if we go out on a fire and need to wash, to launder those, the gear, while that's being washed and dried, we will have backup sets to use just on the interim.
Okay.
In the radio area, this was very worrisome to me as it appeared that the existing personnel really didn't have a good understanding, and I'm working on it too to try and figure it out, and I think I'm getting there, of how the radio system operated. I mean, that's key to our safety on fire grounds, as well as communication back to dispatch. Radios have been issued to individuals. There's only one on each truck, and the tanker does not have a radio. The typical standard is you assign a radio to every seat on the truck. In my previous job, we did years ago assign radios out to all of the individuals, thinking that that is a better way of making people understand their radios and how they work, and they'll have them with them. What we learned over time is that often the radios didn't show up with the person for a call because the radio was left in the wife or the husband's car. If they did have the radio, they turned it on. Oh, it's been sitting in the car for 3 weeks and the battery's dead. So we're going through a radio evaluation now. There is a grant that we have to try and come up with a regional system with Millville. The intent will be that we will not issue portable radios out to every firefighter, that we would issue them to the officers and have one per seat in the truck. We also found, prior to my starting here, sometime over the summer, we lost power in town for some period of time, and apparently the fire department had no radio communication at all. In going through the radio setup up on Inman Hill with some outside people, we found that there are batteries up there. The batteries were from 2009, 3 batteries, and they were dead. So a $400 investment, we put the batteries back in place, and we do have emergency power for a day to 2. That'll allow us to get up there and get a generator started if it's going to be a long-term outage.
So there is a generator up there?
We do have one up there now. There was one, they were in the station, but Chief Harris had one moved up to the site after that day so that there would be one there.
Yeah, because we identified that as an issue through the Municipal Vulnerability Program. When we all came in here, we did a workshop and pointing out areas of concern, and that was one of our top concerns, was that the radio tower didn't have a backup generator. So
yeah,
it's good to know.
There's one there. We also have portable ones that we could assist the police with. I've had conversations with Chief Kersey about the need to have a permanently mounted automatic turn-on generator. Those get expensive, and the maintenance on it, and what some of the radio people, and it was set up this way in my other town, that we did put these car batteries in place that gives us a day or 2. That way we can assess how bad is the situation, and if it is going to be longer, we can go and start up a portable generator. Yeah, it runs on a gas tank, so we'd have to
Maintain it.
periodically go up and fill it up. I think, and it's subject to further discussion with the chief. But I think it's more cost effective, especially in today's world where we don't seem to have the power outages like we used to, at least when I was a kid, that'd be out for 2, 3, 4 days, several times a year. So.
Okay.
If it's predictable, it's preventable.
Sorry?
If it's predictable, it's preventable.
Yes, yep. Yeah, we've become much better at predicting the weather. Not that we can prevent it, but we can react to it.
Right.
The vehicles. So the ambulance, I think everybody knows, is approaching 10 years old. The 2 engines that we have, they're top mount pump panels, which I am not a fan of for several reasons. I don't believe they're, so the top mount means you have to get up onto essentially the top of the truck or the midpoint of the truck in order to put water, take water from the tank and put it out to the hose lines to operate the pump. In a small department like ours, we don't have just one person that we can put up there on a pump panel and have them stay there and operate and make sure everything's going right. We're going to have to be pulling a line, opening that line, going back and using it, bringing in a supply line from the tanker. It causes a lot of up and down on the truck. Summertime, it's not that bad, but when you get into winter, it's a significant injury problem. Mm-hmm. Also looking at the OSHA, the pending OSHA requirements that we may be required to conform to by February 1st of this year, which I have a lot of work to do on. That's an unsafe working condition because you are 6 feet off the ground, and we need to put some type of barrier up there to protect people, whether they have to get into a harness or we can put bars there, that we'd have to explore. The brush pickup, brush 2 that we have, with the skid unit on it and water in it and 2 people in the cab, was almost 300 pounds overweight. It's not good to be running overweight equipment on the roads. A lot of fire departments did it. We did it in my previous department years ago. But we can't do that anymore. Brush 1, which was the real old deuce and a half, they call it, a very slow-moving truck, but is great in the woods. That needed to have $4,000 to $5,000 worth of tire and wheel work done on it. So one of my strolls around the property, I found the old Tanker 3 out by the new building that went up, and I asked about that chassis that was there, and the word from the guys and from the highway department was, oh, it's a great chassis. The tank that's on that and the piping split, so we don't use it anymore. So I had the guys at the highway look at it, and they agreed that it would work, that we could take the skid unit off of the old Brush 1 and put it onto this newer chassis, and we would utilize that as our brush truck. So we will not be putting the skid unit back on the pickup truck. The pickup truck is a 2000 or 2001. The bed is rusting. You get up in it, you can feel it soft. We fixed a 2006 truck in my previous department. Blackstone Valley Tech did a great job, but it's still between getting the bed and the work was in the neighborhood of $5,000. I'm not sure in a 2000, 2001 pickup at this point that it's worth putting that much money into it.
Right.
But anyway, so I think we have a workable solution for brush coming up.
By using Tanker 3.
By using the chassis.
The chassis from Tanker 3,
with the new skid unit on
Yep.
it. And I really like that setup because the pickup truck, one of the things I don't like about the pickup is that it's a smaller bed, and because of the weight issues, you tend to shrink down the water tank, so you're carrying about 250 gallons of water. You can get the small stuff, but if you get a windy day and have to chase it, you're gonna be out of water before you know it. The skid unit that's on the old Brush 1, I'm told it's a 600-gallon tank, so I think that's much more productive for us to be running with that. So moving forward, the ambulance is going to need replacement. Replacing ambulances now you're looking in the $250,000 to $275,000 range. Engine 4 is now 25 years old, which kind of meets its end of life under NFPA standards. Plus the fact that both engines are the top mount, I'd like to look at trying to replace engine 4. There's a possibility that we could purchase a used truck if it's been properly vetted out. That would save significant amount of money to buy a new engine in today's world. If you can get one for $500,000 to $550,000, you're lucky. I think most people are now looking at about $600,000. You can buy believe it or not, there are departments in this country that are so well financed that they replace their engines every 15 years. So that's still got 10 years within the NFPA standard. And you can get some trucks. When I first knew I was coming here, I started looking, and there was a nice truck for under $100,000. So that's a possibility. And again, as long as we properly vet the truck to make sure that we're not buying somebody else's problem. And so overall, and with that engine, really what I'm trying to do is get an engine that's right for this community and not, a lot of times we firefighters like to try and get the biggest and best, and we need something that's really quick and agile that we can quickly do here. We're limited manpower, we have small streets, so we need to be very careful on how we pick our engine.
There's some communities around that have ladder trucks. I don't know what is the value of that, and do you think that Mendon should have one?
No, honestly, in today's setup or I should say in the setup from 10 years ago where we all used to operate independently, I would say yes. From a fire chief's perspective, you want that aerial in your department. You want 2 trucks going out right away, an engine and an aerial. Because if you don't get that aerial there, the roads, the driveways are gonna start getting blocked up, so you need it quickly. In today's world, this is just one of those regionalization things that we really need to be looking for opportunities to stretch our capital dollars. When I was in the previous department, you could look at Douglas, Northbridge, Uxbridge, Millville, and Blackstone, 5 towns all together. They each owned a ladder truck, and I shouldn't say I can guarantee you, because we did use many ladders at the Burnett Mill fire, but to use 5 ladders in that small area at one time is very unlikely to happen. I know we have been utilizing Blackstone, Uxbridge, and Hopedale over the years, and I would anticipate that continuing. At some point, though, we need to be good regional partners, and somehow we need to work with them, and we can't always take. And I think that's the key to effective regionalization, is to make sure that we are able to support each other and that we're not always just taking.
So when you say regionalization, Chief, are you talking mutual aid and reciprocation across mutual aid, or are you?
Well, it may involve a little bit more than that. I mean, we've set up, although it's not technically automatic aid because we don't have anything in writing now, I modified the run cards, which I was going to cover later, but on any reported building fire in town, after they dispatch, the dispatcher dispatches us, they're calling Hopedale for a ladder and a tanker, and they're calling Uxbridge for an engine and a tanker. So we know we have 2 more tankers coming right away for water. Oh, I'm sorry, and they're also calling Millville's engine 2, which is another tanker. So we have 3 more tankers coming, and we have an engine and a ladder coming, without even knowing that it's a confirmed building fire yet. Both chiefs have agreed to do that. So that's part of the regionalization, but in return, we're getting the use of their ladder. It may be beneficial to start looking at making agreements that perhaps we share the expense of the certifications of that ladder, that somehow we
I see what you're saying.
reciprocate to them, yeah. An example of that would be my previous department we're required under OSHA to get fit tested for our SCBA masks to make sure that they're going to effectively protect us. To do that fit testing, you need a machine that is anywhere from $10,000 to $12,000, depending on what you get with that machine. My previous department bought one about a year ago. There's a cost every year to have that calibrated of about $900. When we bought that, our intent, and we did send something out to the surrounding towns to say, hey, we'll do the capital investment, but you surrounding towns contribute to that $900 cost to recalibrate it every year, and we'll share it across.
Okay.
On the equipment side, we essentially have no spare hose, and it didn't really hit me until, and actually this was the week before I started. The guys went out on a car fire, and when I came in to start, the hose was still laid out drying, and we were talking about training, and they said, well, there is no hose in one of the cross lays. And, well, why is that? Well, the hose is out drying. We don't have enough hose to replace hose on the truck once it's been used and needs to be cleaned and dried. The nozzles on the lines are outdated. They're old combination nozzles. We don't have any what's called a smooth bore nozzle, which over the last few years the fire service is finding out would be more efficient for attacking fires. So there's just equipment that we need to be replacing and updating on some of the engines, and we're going to try and do that either with some of the donation accounts that are out there or within the current budget. I'm concerned that the extrication equipment may be a little outdated and may not effectively work on today's cars. And I'll give you a quick little story. We learned this in Uxbridge 5 or 6 years ago. We had to do an extrication on a 62-year-old woman, and we had to cut the top of the car off. And the hydraulic cutters that we had at that time, we couldn't get it to cut the posts, the 4 posts on the roof. And we couldn't understand why, but we ended up having to pull out Sawzalls, and we went through 4 blades cutting all 4 of those posts, which took a little bit of time as well. We started doing an evaluation and found that most of the hydraulic tools, well, we found that they started layering boron metal in those posts, and there's like 5-6 layers of boron in there, which make them really strong so that when a car rolls over, you don't get the compression factor. What that did, though, is made it harder for us to do our job. We evaluated hydraulic tools and found we couldn't find one. We had gotten a piece of boron metal from Universal Auto, and we couldn't find anything to cut through it. We ended up, in some research, bringing in a battery-powered cutting tool. It's called an e-hydraulic tool, and it went through it like butter. The nice thing about those is they work on battery. You don't have an umbilical cord back to a truck, so you have an unlimited range that you can bring those. Many communities, many departments are moving over to that. It's going to be something that we're going to be looking forward to. For an idea of cost, a cutter and a spreader, they're each about $12,000, $13,000 brand new. In my previous department, we bought demo models in the $10,000 range. Our cardiac monitor, which is what we use for advanced life support and determining if a patient is having a heart dysrhythmia, those are in need of replacement. The ones that we have here are not being made anymore by the manufacturer. They are not making any cardiac monitor for the field right now. They've promised that they would support and fix the monitors to the end of 2021 or 22. The reality is, and we found this because we had Phillips over in Uxbridge, that there's one particular part they are no longer making and are not providing, which is a battery charging part. We ended up getting a demo one shipped to us from another part of the country, or the part off of a demo machine so that we could continue operating, but we're running a risk right now of one of the monitors going down. Fortunately, we do have 2. We have one on the rescue truck, but these are going to be up for replacement. Those are in the area of $30,000 a monitor. We are going to remove the ALS stuff off of the rescue truck. It's currently carrying full ALS medications and the monitor. My questioning has led me to believe that I'm not sure it was ever used on the rescue truck since we stopped transporting people. At one point it was a potential transport truck. So now it's just pretty much a truck that we can bring out, and if we're at an incident, we have ALS stuff with us. The practice has been we pull ambulances in on working fires, and so other people are bringing that equipment. So I don't see the need to try and maintain $2,000, $30,000, $35,000 cardiac monitors and keep turning over medications in that truck. Enough with the sad stuff on the equipment. The building. So the building seems to be going pretty well. We've addressed some door issues. I remember coming in a couple of years ago into the station for whatever reason, and there was actually snow on the lobby floor. And they told me because there was a gap in the front doors. And when I started here and I saw that gap still there, so we got that addressed. We put some stuff on the bottom of a couple other doors. Short money, $240, and we won't have snow blowing in the front door anymore.
Imagine that.
I am finding that there apparently is no town-wide storage facility, so we're responsible for storing all of our own files. Obviously, we're going to try and turn it all into online storage as best we can, but we are a little constrained there. I'm looking at options as we try to reduce the apparatus to try and maybe free up part of a bay so that we may be able to make a room and use that for our storage. The other thought would be, as I know the board is trying to decide what to do with the building next door, whether an opportunity may be there to try and use that building partially as a town-wide storage facility. I don't know what's done on backup of IT and whether you can have a remote IT site there as well, so the town could continue to function if wherever our service here go down. But I just wanted to throw that out as I was blabbing away here. Last on the building, we're close to having a sign put up out at Morrison Drive, Providence Street area. I've gotten figures from YYZ Design in town here. Gotten permission from Alan Tatro on the roads. We're going to put that not in the island, but we're going to move it out towards Providence Street a little more and have it in a masonry block setup so that it's protected from vehicles. There's plenty of room on the apron there. Tim McCarty, the building inspector, had said, make sure we have line of sight. Alan and I stepped it out, and we're going to be good. So I'm hoping that I can do it within the budget, and we can get it done, depending on the weather, in the next month or so.
Great.
Training, and that was one of the big things I know from your management report that you had. And honestly, I am not a good instructor. I'm not good at preparing lesson plans and that. So when I knew I was coming here, I reached out to an old friend and a fellow firefighter from Uxbridge. He's unfortunately over 65 and can't do the job on an appointed basis. But Joe Netter, he had served in both Boylston and Uxbridge. Over 36 years in the fire service. He developed a call volunteer recruit program up at the Mass Fire Academy back in the 90s, I think it was. Started his own company 15 years ago, specializing in teaching firefighters throughout the New England area, as well as officers. He's currently doing a program out in Oaks Bluff on the island for that department. He's taught classes at Fire Department Instructors Conference, which is the largest fire service conference in the world. He's done that for the past 8 years. He's written articles for Fire Engineering. He's also published a book, Rapid Intervention Crews, Principles and Practices. And he's done that. The publisher is Jones and Bartlett, which is one of the largest publishers of fire service training books. And he's working on a second book titled Managing Risk in the Volunteer Fire Service. He's well respected in the training area. He does a great job training. So we've lined him up. We're going to be doing 2 trainings a month with him. We actually started in December. He did 2 trainings in December. From what I can tell, the guys really enjoy working with him. And so we're starting at the basics. We're starting with, the SCBA, and we'll be moving on from there. But he was a big addition. I also last week spoke with somebody on the EMS side. He runs a quality assurance company and quality improvement. We are required by OEMS to review our run reports on a regular basis, both for statistics and for quality of care. We appear to be doing a good job on gathering the statistics, but I'm not sure we really have an effective evaluation of our care in place. So that's why I reached out to Hopedale. I had heard they had an outside person doing it, and Chief Day gave me this company. I think I'm going to be pursuing them because they do it from an educational perspective. Very often QA is felt like it's a disciplinary thing. And if you have people within the department starting to QA other members, then they think you're just picking on me, so I'm going to start picking on you, and it starts to create some rifts. So we're going to be looking for outside help there. Mm-hmm. From a regional perspective, we're looking for training opportunities, especially in EMS. We talked about the updated run cards and the automatic aid on the structure fires. The personnel, when I started, we had 5 career positions. One of those 5 is out on long-term, but out of those 5, only 3 of them lived in town. We had 5 on-call firefighters, of which only 2 lived in town, and we have 1 on-call EMT who lives in town. So we had 5 firefighters living in town at that point in time, which is, number one, kind of a scary thing, especially because we are a combination department, primarily an on-call department, and will be for a long, long time. We are working on building our on-call ranks as well. But I think that's going to lead to a decision that the town's gonna have to be making. This is one that I won't make on my own. But, so these guys, very short-staffed. I'll tell you, they've done an incredible job. I can't believe how they've been keeping at least 2 people assigned to covering the ambulance throughout, whether they be in the station, which they've been mostly in the station, or at home. So they've been doing a lot of work. I'm just concerned on how long that's going to continue, so we're going to try and build the on-call staff. But we aren't being fair to the on-call personnel as well from a pay perspective. They are getting paid half of what the career people are getting paid for doing essentially the same type of work. That was initiated, my understanding, somewhere around 8 years ago due to budgetary constraints. So they're getting paid $50 a night to cover an 8-hour shift. Yeah, you calculate that out, that's 2/3 of minimum wage. If we, and I'm pretty sure, and I'm making sure I'm clear now, we're not requiring them to be in the station because that creates some other issues. But if we're going to continue that route and not improve what we're doing with our on-call personnel, we're going to start seeing elongated response times, because they are going to be getting out of bed at home, getting dressed, driving to the station to get the apparatus. So we need to do something on the on-call side. Plus, the firefighters are getting a monthly stipend, regardless of how many calls they do, how many trainings they come to. It leads to a little bit of, why do I come down all the time when I'm getting paid the same amount as the other guy? There hasn't been a lot that's squabbling. It's just one of those little currents that you pick up every now and then. Our paramedic coverage, I'm concerned with our meeting that we're going to be having with our inspector this month. Depending on how you interpret the OEMS regulations, we're required to have a paramedic assigned to coverage 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. That's required. Initially, when you start paramedic coverage, you're given a 3-year time frame to get to 24/7 coverage. We are many years beyond that, and it's a concern that I think has been expressed before, and I think the state has been good in giving a little bit of leeway, but I think their patience may run out soon. I know over in Uxbridge, on our 4th year, our inspector came in and said, "Do you always have a paramedic on duty?" And my first response was, "Yeah," and then I said, "No, 4 or 5 shifts a year, that's 4 or 5 8-hour shifts." I said, "We may run basic. And he said, "You can't do that." And I explained to him that we have on-call paramedics. They can call for the paramedics. We have intercept agreements with other communities. He required us to have a paramedic on duty because we were beyond our 3-year time frame. So with that, I'm going to slowly wrap this stuff up. What we need to do, and I've got a draft organizational chart. I don't know if you want to look at it now or if you want to take with. But basically, I modeled this after what we've done in Uxbridge and what many communities do. Where we try to make this what it is. It's a combination department. It's not a career department. It's not an on-call department. We need to all work together. It's primarily on-call. So what you see here are these 4 groups, which could consist of on-call personnel or career personnel who have agreed to cover from an on-call basis. And those groups are all led by an officer. And then the 5th column over, you see EMS or career only. Those are the career people or EMT onlys that do not want to serve on the fire side of the call department. So what this does is recognize that we all work together and we don't separate out the career from the on-call personnel. in addition to, and this I set as a draft and as a model to work towards, believe me, it's going to be a long time before we can populate all of these boxes, even on the officer side. But what I would like to do this month, what I'm planning to do this month, and as long as I'm not overstepping my bounds, or if you agree that, I'd like to put a lieutenant's test out there and an assessment for a couple of reasons. One, if we have personnel within the department that can be successful in a test and successful in an assessment, that I can start working with one of them and developing them as an officer. It gives me another person on a scene that I can assign out something to and grow some authority there. But it'll also, for the existing people, kind of see what this process entails. Even if they want to take the test just for the experience of taking the test and understanding what's being expected of them. In order to do the lieutenant's test, I had put together, actually I brought with me from my previous department a more detailed lieutenant job description, which does list out the qualifications, and along the lines of what your management report had previously told you, the minimum qualifications are besides the normal, you need a driver's license, high school diploma. You need certification to firefighter 1, 2, and fire officer by the Pro Board. So that's setting that minimum standard of certifications that we need to have in order to be moving forward, as well as it brings up the ICS class up to the 200 level as well. So unless there's objections, I'd like to pursue that process this month.
I have no objection to that.
Thank you. I had on the on-call side as well, I did a brief little survey of our surrounding towns, Uxbridge, Northbridge, Upton, Hopedale, and Millville. And so I put together a little spreadsheet here with how they compensate their on-call personnel. And what you'll see in the first column there is what I'm proposing to do for Mendon, and it is very close to the 5-town average of the other towns, where we change from doing them really what's an annual stipend of $2,000 for a firefighter. We change that to an annual stipend of $500, but we give them an hourly rate of $15 an hour for their training and their responses for a firefighter. And because we'll be looking to potentially fill a lieutenant position, we do a $1,000 stipend on a lieutenant and a $16 an hour hourly rate. I believe that I should be good the rest of the year if we were to make this change now in the budget perspective to start fairly compensating people. Because there are some people that can't make the training, so we're going to get an offset in the additional cost of the more active people. And again, these averages, the proposal is very close to the average of the 5 towns. There's a wild swing from as low as $12 an hour in Millville with no stipend up to $20 and a $1,300 stipend in Hopedale, roughly $1,500 and a $2,100 stipend in Upton. So I think we're fair anyways. We may have to at some point in the future, if we're having trouble bringing in on-call people, become a little more aggressive in that area, but I'll monitor that and check in with you should we think that may need to happen. Is the board okay with doing something like this moving forward now? Or would you like to consider it? And
Me personally, I think I've always been in favor of paying an hourly rate, so I definitely want to do that. We're in the middle of, I think we heard this earlier, we're in the middle of a budget season, so, I think we need to get through this and we need to look at our budget. If you're saying that you can carry it within your budget, then I'd be okay. What I'd be concerned about is that we go over that budget where we're gonna make up that surplus. That's my biggest concern.
Yeah, really what it changes is from a fixed amount that we're paying to being completely dependent on what calls we have.
Yeah,
And that's why
that's right.
it's hard to say,
I know.
yeah, I mean, we could do 3 house fires and, you know, with the numbers of people we have, it's probably about $1,000 a house fire, but in a small budget, that could be eaten up quickly.
Yeah, we're gonna have to, but as you know, I mean, you've done this a long time, we have to apply averages, right?
Right,
At that point,
right.
so,
Well, it also puts the burden on me as a manager, and was the same thing in Uxbridge, to have our responses meet the requirements.
right.
So, for example, and many towns do this, so I don't want to, you know, it's nothing wrong with it happening here, but a lot of people send an engine company out on medicals. And in Mendon, we were sending an engine company out on chest pain calls, which you could get there for a chest pain, and it's because somebody whacked somebody in the chest, and it's not truly a cardiac event.
Yeah.
So we were always calling those people in. With a set stipend, that's okay, because we're not paying them anything more, but really what we're doing is we're tempering their desire to come back on the calls that we really need them by doing that.
I was never in favor of going straight to stipend, all right? So I totally agree with that. My concern is that right now, we've managed the budget towards the stipend, all right? So we're at a fixed cost right now. So if you can carry it within your budget to change, or if we can carry it within the budget for the rest of the fiscal year, then we have enough money in the budget to be able to do that. When it comes to response and paying the guys, you're going to respond to any incident, and you're going to apply whatever staffing ratios for however long you have to in order to take care of that incident. So erase that and erase the budget,
Right.
That's completely separate. What I'm talking about right now is what we have in the budget, and then what we want to manage to in the future. That's all I care about for next fiscal year.
My question is.
Does that make sense? I'm sorry, Mike.
Yeah, no, I understand.
Yeah.
With the annual stipend, has that already been paid out? Or is
It's
that-
paid out monthly. It's $166 a month that they get paid.
So, if we could, I mean, what's your opinion, Kim?
I think we've been talking about changing this for a couple of years now, and I think that in order to start moving forward with this department in the way that we need to in order to actually attract and retain personnel, if this is his recommendation, then I think we should do it as soon as possible, especially if he can carry it within his current operating budget. I mean, I really see little risk at this point in the fiscal year. I mean, we're in January, and if this is something that can get more people on board so we can start moving towards this structure, the sooner the better. So we have an idea of what we're really looking at for the May budget timeline. I mean, it's one thing to propose we want to do a combination of call and, staff, career staff, but if we aren't going to get call, then we don't know. So hopefully if we can change this, we'd get a better indication of how realistic that is as a possibility for us, so.
Yeah, again, like I said, what I'm really concerned about is being totally upside down, certainly with the amount of training and everything else that we got going on right now. We didn't plan for it within the budget. I'm totally 1,000% in support of this. I'm just trying to figure out the timing of when we actually implement.
Yeah,
If you think you can carry it, then that's great. It
If
just,
we look at it from the other side, we have 6 on-call firefighters that could come back. So on a 1-hour call, we're talking about $90. So and I know we're trying to put the incidents aside, but I think the downside or the risk of going significantly over budget is small.
okay,
Because we are talking about such few numbers.
sure.
If we had a department of 20 and we were always doing on-calls and we had 15 people coming back,
Then you'd be in
I'd
trouble.
start to worry about that. But with just 6, I think our downside risk is small.
Yeah. And, I mean, obviously, we have a campaign right now to build up that force, too.
Yeah, and the campaign went pretty well. I mean, we put those signs up quickly before the ground froze, and we got a couple of people here tonight to be appointed.
Sure.
That's partially driven by budget as well, because in order to properly hire people, as MRI pointed out, we need to send them to a physical, which is in the $500 to $600 range now. We need to send them to the physical abilities test, which is a $150 cost. So, and you can't send them to the physical abilities test until they've had their physical.
Right.
It's a $500 to $600 investment in somebody that may fail the test,
Yeah.
and that's now gone. And it happened to me with 2 candidates in my previous department. It was a $1,200 hit to the department that it's significant. So while we're trying to do a campaign, I'm not in a position budget-wise to be able to bring 10 people in to send them off to a recruit class. So my plan is, about 3 to 4 every cycle, which is a 4-month cycle. So I'm 3 people, 1 internal and 3 new people in March, looking at 3 to 4 maybe in July, depending on what the budget can hold going into the end of June, and then potentially 3 to 4 more in the November timeframe.
Okay. Well, fortunately, we'll be in the new fiscal year and we can plan accordingly, right?
Right.
So-
I'm trying to build that in. Yes.
Well, I mean, I think if the chief thinks that he's comfortable within the budget to be able to do it,
Yeah.
maybe we should just make the
Yeah,
change. and-
yeah, again, I'm 1,000% in support of it, I'm just, again, without actually seeing where you're on your budget right now and I know exactly what we planned for this year, so, there's a lot of stuff going on. This list is huge, by the way, I got 3 pages, so.
I mean, honestly, one of the things I've been trying to do in my spare time over the last few weeks is really understand the budget, and it's hard for me to get a grasp of it because of the way that we record the expenses. So I'm trying to, from an operating expense side, I'm trying to pull out, it's as simple as Coastal Medical Billing. They do our billing for our ambulance runs. Their expenses traditionally have been put into the medical supplies training line instead of the contracted services or professional services line. And the budget's there,
Yeah.
because I came in, it's
Just
like,
which buckets are coming out of.
wow, we use $25,000 a year in ambulance supplies in Uxbridge. Why does Mendon use $30,000 a year in supplies for, a fifth of the calls? And I started to uncover why. It's because Coastal Medical Billing is considered a medical thing, so they go into the medical supplies line, but really they're a contracted service. So, and the same thing a little bit in the salaries area. When a shift is filled by an on-call person, to me, that really should go into the overtime line, because we budget the overtime line for shift coverage as well as some callbacks. But that goes, the shift coverage is going into the part-time line, which I would normally estimate how many calls do we have the call people come in for and calculate out, and I wouldn't put shift coverage in. So I'm trying to, as part of going to, the hourly rate and that, set up for the budget for next year that we can start, I don't want to say properly recording, but more effectively recording and understanding what's going on in the budget.
Yeah. Kim, if you're really comfortable,
I am. I mean, at this point, this is why we got him, so.
Well, no, but take that aside, I totally get that piece of it.
His budget, even if by some occurrence, the numbers started to flop in the wrong direction, we have a mechanism within the last 90 days in order to provide additional funding. So I'm not overly concerned. I'm more concerned about missing an opportunity to recruit right now, while we're sort of, the momentum of recruiting right now, so.
Yeah, well, I think what I heard is, we just put one on-call guy on, or 2 on-call guys on, right?
We have one on-call person who is working now, actually helped us out at the 2 accident night that we had last week.
Yeah.
So he's the only addition that we put on that can work now. We've got 3 people set up to go into the recruit class in March. We have 1 current on-call EMT. He's really not cleared to do firefighting. He helps out on scene, but he's going into the 1-2 program as well. So we'll have the 4 people in that recruit program.
Yeah, I'm just trying to manage the census that you just went through, so that's all, I'm just trying to figure it all out in my
Right.
head. Because, it's, in my opinion, I mean, you're doing a fantastic job with how you laid it out. I totally agree 1,000% with how you're doing it. It's, again, just managing so much so fast, and my concern always is, I think it's a great idea, but what is the impact to the P&L,
Right.
when you do that, so.
And I have to be very careful on that. I mentioned the nozzles, I mentioned the hose. There's an appliance that I've learned about in the past couple of months that would be very helpful on water supply for us that don't have any hydrants.
Yeah, of course.
I really got to watch the budget, and I have to temper myself back to stay, knowing when I can acquire something to make our service better versus having to wait till next year.
So,
One last thing, because I need to set you up for this on the budget. We talk about properly supporting our on-call personnel, and especially on the ambulance coverage. We can bring those stipends up to start properly supporting them. We have to be careful about doing it right now because there are some contractual things. But the reality is, what we are paying our on-call people to cover ambulance shifts is way under what the current market is. Upton's at the point where they are going to 2 people around the clock, 24/7. One of the reasons is because they've hit they want to go to the paramedic level, and they have to have paramedics on duty. So while they're going through the hiring process, they brought per diem paramedics in, and the chief there is happy that he's able to get people to fill those shifts at $25 an hour, which, and that's only on the EMS side. So when I started looking at the budget options, and I go from, if we just do what we're doing today, to going to 8 people on the floor, so we have 2 career people on 24/7, the delta is about $55,000. If we were to be required by the state to have a paramedic on duty, and we had to pay that $25 per diem rate, besides all the issues of making sure that we're staying under 20 hours and the now mandated sick time accrual for employees, it would actually be more expensive to do that by my calculations than to just get the career staff to 8 people. So the budget that I've submitted to Kim is a budget that has 3 additional career people on it. I don't think we're going to need to go any further than that for years to come, but I think that in order to provide just the basic level of immediate fire, immediate ambulance response in the town for the number of calls we have, I think 2 people are needed. I think the town deserves it, but I think it's also sufficient with the backup of a good on-call force to provide the service. So that's the budget that I submitted. I understand there's a lot of things that need to be taken into consideration through the process, but I just wanted to give you that heads up as well.
Great. Well, we really appreciate that update. It's something I'm not quite used to receiving such thorough information on our.
Well, you've invested an awful lot in, the MRI and the reports and all that, and looking at what you really wanted to do with the fire department, and you've taken some big steps, so I thought it was important to let you start to hear some of the fruits of your efforts.
So, just 2, actually 3 quick comments, Chief. Number 1, I echo Mark's sentiment, and, thank you very much, and, obviously, we know that there's a lot of heavy lifting to do, and, so thank you this has been a great overview. I see a lot of low-hanging fruit here, stuff that we might be able to manage in the budget, or I assume you're going after or looking into grant opportunities, stuff like that, in order to cover a lot of maybe some of this lower-hanging fruit. I'm a little bit more concerned about, some of the bigger stuff that you outlined tonight, the ambulance, the engines, all that other stuff. If we follow our process in the community, we really should be working through a CapEx committee. We really should be looking at this, and we should really be aligning with the rest of the town. So we've invested a lot into public safety, and we're going to continue on investing a lot into public safety. this is a long plan, and I think what would be helpful for me is for you to really take a good hard look at this. I know everything's a priority on this list, but really truly prioritize it. So that'll help us really establish what we should be going after first. I mean, I wish we had a unlimited budget, and we could just keep on going after this stuff and give everything you want, because I really think the town deserves it. But you've been doing this a long time. We can't just take care of everything all in one shot. So I think that would be helpful, is to prioritize all the stuff, because there's quite a bit here. And then hopefully the CapEx committee will really start getting really fired up, and we can really start addressing some of those priorities. And I think that within those priorities, it'd be helpful to include timelines, but realistic and honest timelines, not, I just need it now.
Right.
But, if it's an NFPA requirement, or if it's a, something that's outdated that's gonna put the town at risk, or whatever it may be, I think that would be helpful, because then that's gonna help defend the arguments when we sit there and we're requesting that we go after this type of stuff.
Yeah.
Okay?
Yep, understood. And just so you know my philosophy, I'm going to let you know about things, but whatever the town is able to afford to invest in public safety, I'm going to make work to the best that we can make it work.
Sure.
And prioritize, and I will prepare something for you.
Yeah, that'd be really helpful.
Yeah. Sure.
Yeah. And if there's grant opportunities that are out there, certainly, I know you will, I know that's your experience, so.
Yeah, I know Chief Harris had mentioned, I'm not sure what's happened to the SAFER grant, which is the personnel side. That was supposed to have opened in December, and it didn't, and I'm not sure if it's part of all this politicking that's going on. But basically, that allows departments to increase their personnel to try to meet response standards, where the federal government pays 65% the first 2 years and 35% the third year. So that allows you to add personnel and kind of soften it and build up that investment over 3 years.
Yeah.
And so that by that time, new growth and all that within the town will be able to support the full cost.
Right.
So I'm gonna try and find out what's happening with that program, and if we can't put that, should the board want to move that direction, we can put that forward.
Fantastic. Thanks, Chief, that was awesome.
Okay, next point here is consider the appointment of Nicholas
Are you gonna make a motion on the changing of the on-call? It's just mine, it's so loud.
So
we
moved.
can. Step down, second, all in favor? Aye.
Thank you.
Thank
you.
Okay, consider the appointment of Nicholas Icardi.
So I move to appoint Nicholas Icardi to the position of on-call firefighter recruit.
Step down, second. Discussion.
Just a quick background, then you can speak with Nicholas. Nick approached me. He's a veteran of the Marine, so he is a Marine, and he's looking for potentially a career in the fire EMS service. He has gone through the interview process, the police background check, the medical physical, and last Thursday passed the PAT, so he's all good to go forward into the recruit program. To go to the recruit program, they need to be a member of a fire department, so I'll ask you to appoint him as a recruit firefighter, because one of the conditions is that he has to pass the recruit academy and get Fire 1-2 certified. So when he is successful, by the end of June, we'll be coming back before you to appoint him as a regular firefighter.
Well, first of all, thank you for your service.
Thank you.
Yeah, that's awesome. And so what interests you in the fire service? I just got to ask you.
Honestly, it's very similar to the Marine Corps. It's somewhat of a brotherhood, and one of my best friend, he's actually in the back right here, actually served with me in Afghanistan, and he was my driver, and he's been telling me he's a firefighter in Sacramento, California, and he's known that it's been something that I could do and be successful at, and he's been bugging me to do it, and I finally got the opportunity and I jumped on it.
Right.
Excellent.
Excellent. And you're a Mendon resident, right?
Yes, sir. I actually live right across the street.
Awesome. Close to the station.
Yeah, I mean, I have no questions. If Chief Kessler is happy with you, then I'm happy.
Yeah, I mean, seriously, I was just kind of rubbing you just to see what you'd say, but I know you're going to be a good candidate, to be honest.
I appreciate
that.
that.
Yeah, so.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Hey, welcome aboard.
Thank
Look forward
you.
to it. All right, thank you.
Is consider the appointment of Kevin Anderson, the position of on-call firefighter.
All right, so I move to appoint Kevin Anderson to the position of on-call firefighter recruit.
Step down second. Discussion.
Kevin was one of the first people to come in and say, I want to be a firefighter. He does live in town. He's had some interest in public safety, but I'll let him explain that. He has also been through the full process, and last Thursday passed his PAT as well.
Oh, fantastic.
How are you? Good. Good. So maybe the same question. What interests you in joining?
Yeah, I have family in the public safety background. For me, I think it's just wanting to be involved in the community and helping out as much as I can. And I think I can do a pretty good job of that, hopefully.
Yeah, you in town also?
Yeah, right
Yeah.
up the street.
Oh, cool.
And he works primarily from home, so
Yeah.
That's helpful.
Even better. Yeah.
daytime help as well.
Great.
No, fantastic.
Okay, same for me. I mean, if Chief Kessler is excited to have you join, then
Absolutely.
I'm fine.
Yeah, just a formality.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Oh, welcome
Thank you.
aboard and thank you.
Thank you.
All right, thanks,
Thank you
Chief.
so much. Discuss budget. Should we rethink everything?
Well, that is one of the things. So just to catch you up where we're at, I've wrapped up the department head meetings and the board meetings the last 2 weeks or so. The primary budget drivers at this point would be whatever you decide to do with the fire department and what direction you want to go in. All of the other requests are things that we've seen before. There's no major surprises in there. I am aware of his equipment concerns in regards to vehicles, and I do have some ideas around that, so I'm not overly concerned. I think we've got some creative ways we might be able to address that, but we don't have to worry about it just yet. Everything, the revenue numbers are mostly in, governor's numbers aren't in yet for the budget, so this is very early in the process.
Weeks.
Yes, so, I mean, it's all looking sort of,
Can you,
Baseline.
I mean, you obviously have a list of the requests.
not yet.
Well, when you do have it
Of
ready.
course, yes. So we're just at the stage now where all of the departments have finalized putting their numbers into KVS, and that's all locked, and I'm finally able to generate a report to really show us what our, where we're at. But of course, as you know, we won't have the school's numbers, which is a huge part of what we're able to afford to do on our side. So we need about another month or so on that. So I will keep you posted, but it looks almost identical to last year, with the one exception of the fire department. So I should be okay. And that's really my only update on it. It's short and sweet for now.
Excellent. Future meeting dates.
So, as I previously discussed, so we would meet again potentially on the 21st, but that is a holiday. So I'm suggesting that we meet January 28th, which is the following Monday. And then for the month of February, try to follow that same pattern, because President's Day will also be in February. So we'll be, our Mondays would be off, so we do the 28th, the 11th, and then the 25th, and then we could revisit March, because March is when we'll be having our budget meetings with FinCom anyway. So I would say for the next 3 meetings, I would do the 28th, the 11th, and then the 25th.
That's fine, I'm good on those.
Good. All right. We have nothing anticipated. Wonderful. Okay, I move to enter into executive session under Purpose 3, Mass General Law, Chapter 30A, Section 21A3, to discuss strategy with respect to collective bargaining with the Mendon Town Hall Union Local 272, Mendon Highway Department Local 272, Mass Coalition of Police Union, AFL-CIO Local 188, Mendon Police Civilian Dispatch Union Local 188A, and the Mendon Permanent Firefighters Union Local 4936, IAF. Roll call vote is needed. We will reconvene only to adjourn.
Second.
Step down second. All in favor?
Burke, aye.
Real aye. Thank you, everyone.
Really great water. we'll do that.
Want me to wait outside?
No, just wait, because we'll do it right away.
Okay.
And that's really the only one I